Good evening, everybody. What's going on? Welcome back. Coach Artie Raps with another, I don't know if you could call it a video because it's just going to be me talking with some pictures, but we're getting there, guys. Okay, I'm slowly just trying to grow the channel. And if you guys want to hear me talk on a topic, for whatever it's worth to you, please put it in the comments below. What are you curious to hear my thoughts on? Um, Wanted to talk about a topic that's been done before, but I feel like I have an interesting perspective on it. Okay, and the topic is: do you drill or do you not drill when it comes to learning new techniques in jiu-jitsu? To drill or not to drill? Okay, or to break it down a little further, for those of you who don't know. Most commonly, I would say most jujitsu techniques are learned through what you might hear referred to as static drilling, meaning you have one person who is the uke. And uke in Japanese means like to receive. Kind of a judo term. One person is the uke, or as my dad likes to say, the victim, and the person who's drilling the technique just practices the move without any resistance. And the idea is you practice it enough times, it eventually becomes muscle memory. And then you just kind of repeat the process with pretty much any other technique you want to learn. So the counter argument to this, okay, there's a coach named Greg Souders, who runs a gym called Standard BJJ. And really smart guy. I definitely listened to. I've listened to his content before, but I was really kind of just trying to circle back and listen to more of his content in preparation for this. And he makes a very interesting point. Basically, where he's coming from, and it all comes from. There's this kind of problem called the degrees of freedom problem, where basically there was a group of blacksmiths. Okay, there was a scientist, I forget his name, but he was watching two groups of blacksmiths. One of them were kind of novice blacksmiths; they were newer, and he noticed that while all their swings, their when they would swing their hammer, it would all look the same. Like the way they would swing their hammer would all look the same, probably because that's just the way they were taught. But the results were widely different, right? Like whatever they were making, let's say if you had like 5 novice blacksmiths and you had them all making a sword, that might all swing their hammers the same way to make the sword. But their swords might all look different. Now, on the flip side, when you have experienced blacksmiths, basically the idea was that all their results, what they were making, all the results looked the same, but their swings were wildly different. So you could have 5 experienced blacksmiths, have them all make a sword. All their swords would look perfect, but their swings, right, the way they would swing the hammer and I guess tap it on the metal would look completely different. And if you take that and you apply that to jiu-jitsu techniques, right, whenever you're learning a technique in static drilling and then you go to do that technique live when somebody's actually fighting back, it can definitely present some problems. And I think that the idea is like the deeper you get into something, you're going to kind of figure out your own way of doing something which looks a little different. And I think just based on your body type, the moves you like. And so we'll kind of get into it a little bit, guys. Okay, so first, I think for me, the case for drilling. Why is it good to drill new techniques? Why is it good to drill new moves? Why shouldn't you just kind of show up in live training? We'll kind of break that down a little more, right? So the case for, I would say, drilling, and kind of circling back to my last video with Andrew, Andrew Wiltsey. He's someone who's a big fan of drilling, and his idea is like, if you watch any of his content, he was really into these 10,000 rep challenges where you just pick a move and rep it 10,000 times over and over and over again. And the idea was eventually, it just becomes muscle memory. And that's kind of the idea behind the buzzsaw passing, the buzzsaw mentality. You've drilled these passes and these sequences and these passing chains, these combinations of passes so many times that you can just go from one to the next to the next to the next, and you just overwhelm somebody, right? Maybe it's not the first pass that gets you, it's the third, the fourth, the fifth. And his whole argument was like, well, you don't really learn, like if you just show up to an open mat and you just roll, he's like, when was the last time you learned a new technique by doing that? You don't really. You learn new techniques by drilling, by practicing them. And then whenever you go to open mat, that's kind of where you strengthen these techniques that you've already kind of developed a little bit through drilling, right? And that's when you can kind of troubleshoot, and guys, honestly, that's the way I learned. That's the way I think a lot of people learned. I think the argument for drilling, why you wouldn't just do these, these kind of different kinds of games, which again, I'll break down a little bit, is that grappling, and to me, this is kind of my opinion a little bit too, grappling is not super intuitive to people. I think, a lot of people can watch striking and they can watch, okay, I hit you in the head and you fall down, and they can get a basic sense of what it's supposed to look like. Grappling, jujitsu, there's just so many, wrestling, judo, man, there's just so many techniques, so many moves, so many kind of subtle little things that are going on at once. Can be really tough to pick up. Like case in point, when you have a brand new, if you get a brand new person in class and you teach them how to shoot for a double leg takedown, they're almost always going to leave their head in front of their hips to grab the legs and get sprawled on. Okay, and I know this, guys. The reason why I feel like I have a unique perspective on this is that I've coached beginners for a very long time. Okay, I think I've coached beginners for about 4 years now, so I guess not very long, but long enough. And not just beginners. I haven't just coached beginners classes. But also kids. So I have a lot of experience with people who are brand new to grappling, have never seen it before, have no idea what they're even supposed to be doing, and I've had to learn kind of how to break it down and explain it to them, and I think there's just a lot of moves, a lot of techniques that you watch them, kind of attempt to do it, and it's just ineffective, and I think if you don't have a coach there, you don't have someone breaking down to you kind of why it works and what it's supposed to look like and the basic idea, I just feel like you might progress a little bit slower, So that's the case for drilling. Now, the case against drilling, okay, where Greg is kind of coming from is, he was like, okay, if I practice a knee cut on just a regular non-resisting opponent, and I have you just, then I just point out somebody and I'm like, okay, go do that knee cut to so-and-so. It's probably going to be, especially if it's the first time you're learning a knee cut, right? You're probably not going to get it, and I would agree that, if you're, what he does is he breaks jiu-jitsu down into these games, and they're very specific games. They're not the same as positional training. So, the games could be like, I'm trying to position myself just past the line of your feet, and I'm trying to keep myself there. So there's like these maintenance games where I'm just trying to maintain a set of conditions, right? Or it could be we start in chest to chest half guard. My goal is just to keep my chest on this person's chest for as long as possible. Once they break contact, then we switch. And I like these ideas. One more that I really like them practicing that I saw was in the armbar position, starting in the Jujikatami, and not letting your partner's hand attach to anything. But at the same time, you're not finishing the armbar, And I think the reason why I like these games and I think they're really effective is it teaches you to build all these little skills that make you good at jiu-jitsu over time. The art of keeping your chest on somebody's chest, the art of keeping your chest on somebody's back if you get behind them, or the skill of keeping contact with somebody's leg. And really, if you kind of look back a little bit, maybe even to like 2016, 2017, it's if you look at any kind of ecological dynamics class, they're very adamant that it is not the same as positional rounds, positional training. It's much different, and I think the first people to kind of make moves a little bit, make changes with just positional training, to me at least, the first kind of group of people I saw doing it was Danner and the Danner Death Squad, because I think before that the idea was you show up to a class, the instructor shows one move, and then all right, you free train, and you just live train from open guard, you live train from the feet. You have like an idea of what moves you're trying to go for, but you're not like hyper focusing on things, and I think the reason why, partly why the Danaher Death Squad got so effective was not just because of the leg locks, right? They were just doing this system, this game that nobody had really totally had a lot of experience with yet. But they were also doing positional training, at least they were, again, like I said, the first people I know to start training like that, where they would start in mount, they would start in the armbar position, start in the turtle position, and they would just work from there, and the idea was like, okay, if you have somebody who's been training for, 15 years, and they're just free rolling from the feet every single time, and then you have someone else who's been training for maybe like 6 or 7 years, but they've been working on all these different positions. The idea is like, okay, the person who's been training for 6 or 7 years gets the person who's been training for 15 years in one of those little niche areas, niche positions. And even though, the competitor who's been doing it for 15 years has more experience than them, the person who's been doing it for 6 or 7 years has way more experience in that one position. And that's what makes them so effective, And so, honestly, guys, like, my final thoughts on the whole situation. You're probably already guessing what I'm about to say. I think you should do a mix of both. Like something I do in my kids' classes now is we'll do static drilling just so they can kind of see what the technique is supposed to look like, how it's supposed to feel, and then we'll play some games kind of at the end, and have a lot of different games. One's like start in the front headlock, keep your partner's hands on the mat, try not to lose their head. Once you do switch, we have some wrestling games we like to play, some chest to back games. So I think there's value in both. Something I will say, I think when it comes to like when I think it's effective, I can see the eco approach being really effective for somebody who is already experienced in jiu-jitsu, and if you guys know who DeAndre Corbe is, Greg Sauter's student, he's kind of known for winning West Coast trials, which is notoriously one of the hardest ADCC trials to win, but you could make the argument that, okay, well, DeAndre was already a black belt from another gym, and I think, to me at least, what I tell a lot of new people, I think when you're a beginner, your training should be like maybe 80% practicing, learning new techniques, and like 20% just live sparring, And then as you get deeper, you get more experienced and you become like purple, brown, black, especially. It should be the other way around. It should be like maybe like 80-90% live training, 10% drilling and figuring things out, So those are just my thoughts on everything, guys. Okay. Man, again, guys, I welcome all criticisms, all ideas. If you guys have tips on how to make my videos better, please feel free to throw them out there. Okay. Thank you again, guys, for all the subscribers. I think I have 240 now. So, man, I just appreciate it so much, guys. I'm just trying to grow, trying to keep getting better, trying to keep putting out content. So, again, guys, those are my thoughts on the whole situation. Please share yours. Would love to hear in the comments down below, and have a good night.